Well, that's not, that's a Husqvarna. It's a contraption, sure. That's just one that I bought already done that way. It's, I don't know, 10 years old. It's a little, I've had it for a while. It's been a great little zero-turn lawn tractor, so I definitely put it to many different uses. But here's one of the most recent uses. So my driveway, well, according to my postal carrier, it was just impassable. There was no way on God's green earth or heavens above that she would have been able to deliver my mail to my house, like big packages to my front door or anything like that. It just wasn't safe. Of course, why it suddenly became unsafe when it was in the same condition after about 15 years, I doubt very much it had anything to do with me complaining finally one day about her delivery methods, which, feel free to look me up in Google reviews for our local Greenville postal service, or any of my Facebook rants or anything else. But yeah, so that's a whole other video. I'd love to go into more detail about it. I really would. I just like to get some awareness on that whole situation. But I really was going to talk about this contraption that I built to help resolve that issue, which is not really going to resolve it, but it hopefully will take away the convenient excuse, which if you've ever been down my road, my city maintained road, Poplar Springs, that road for the same 15 years has had potholes in it the size of, a small Volkswagen. So, it would swallow a car. There's so many potholes on that road, and of course the complaint became that my driveway was so horrible because it had a puddle of water occasionally at the bottom near the mailboxes. So, yeah. Lots of pictures, and I've taken lots of complaints that have fallen on deaf ears because I guess the Tennessee kind of good old boy group, I don't know exactly how you describe it, but clearly supervisors are taking sides with employees for no other reason than they're an employee. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is the blader that I built out of scrap metal parts that I've been accumulating for years. First I started out with just the hitch part, and then of course the hitch got weak. I welded it just to reinforce it, and it still was kind of iffy. And so I thought we needed to do something in the way of like a 3-point harness. So that's where the top framework thing came into play, which just got really, really loose here, I noticed. So, well, that just simply didn't have a pin in it yet, but the bolts down here really, they just kind of let go. It takes a lot of vibration and jarring. So anyway, it basically started out with just the hitch and this portion here, and I had intended for it to swivel and raise and lower, and I had some issues with the way I built it. I thought I was starting wrong, and then I realized I actually was doing it the way I intended to do it. So I'll put it together, I'll use it a little bit, or look at how it might be used, and then I'll come up with another thing that I should put on it. And so I'll just show you some of those things. This, you just lift it out, and as you can see, I use a lot of hubs, old vehicle hubs. So when you lift that out, the the bolts there will come out of the holes, and you can actually turn it then, which it helps to turn it if you have it raised first. Let me raise it. All right. So to stop it, we got these various holes in either side of the main lever bracket there, lever, whatever you want to call it. And there's a series of holes drilled at just different positions for what height it is. So that's how I started out with was the height and the swivel. So the swivel works pretty nice. It was supposed to turn all the way around so you could do a backward drag on it. Because of my handle here, it doesn't quite get there. So I need to do some sort of cutting and re-welding of the handle in just a slightly different position, I think, so I can get to that. But it does work pretty good. So I was getting down where it was kind of loose and muddy, and the blade would get buried, and backing up the tractor would not help the situation. And driving it forward, of course, would make it worse as well. So then I would come back here, and I would see how often I could bust my knuckles or cut myself trying to get this, which was the pin that I actually designed to go in those holes, that it locks in. But it really locks in tight, especially when you put a little extra leverage on these different parts of this build. And so it's nearly impossible to get it out. And so I thought, well, why not have it without a pin and just let it really want to be digging down. But if it has to go up, it still has the ability to go up without trying to jerk out that pin. And so that's where I come up with the idea of doing spring-loaded action on it. So this is just like the light tension setting. And with this one, you can still quite easily, lift it up and set the adjustment with a pin or a screwdriver I have here, because it's a little bit smaller, it comes out easier. Now, if you want the additional tension on there, what I've designed this to do is you just actually pull down on this handle, which I'm not going to be able to do right now because it's up, but I'll put it down and show you. Once you pull down on it, you're going to actually grab this bar here and pull that one towards you, and when you do that, of course, it moves this, which locks into these, and holds the second level spring tension in place, and it works really good. Actually, the whole setup, the way I have it now, is working really good. This is probably the 7th or 8th revision of it that I've done, and I wouldn't be surprised if there came to be more that I have to do. So this bar, I couldn't find exactly the size that it is, like 2x3, let's call it, I'm not sure. So I basically had to build it, but first time I built it out of this type of metal I have right here. It's kind of a galvanized metal, and it broke apart really easy. So I went to the scrapyard and I found some actual steel. And I got that, but I see now that there's some more stress fractures and cracks and things. At some point I'll have to at least re-weld this. Now, one thing I did do with this one, because of the bad experience I had with the other one, I have a tendency to go over the top and do things that aren't necessarily necessary sometimes. I had a bunch of aluminum laying around, and so I have a homemade foundry that I made years ago. So I thought, well, why not? Let's see if I can make it solid. So I melted as much aluminum as I could, and poured as much, as I could into this into this bar that I made. So, I might just weld that. Hopefully, the aluminum on the inside wouldn't contaminate the weld in any way, but I can't imagine it would. But even if it did, I think we're still going to have something pretty strong because it is solid inside. Of course, I broke all these welds, and so when I redid them, I don't even know if you want to call those welds. They look really awful, but they hold for a while anyway, long enough for me to get proof of concept, and then they break again, and then I grind them off and put some real steel in there instead of that galvanized stuff, and I just redo it. It's hard welding into these things though, and I do have a stick welder, and I've got oxyacetylene, and I've got a wire feed and it just it probably just takes a little bit of a special talent that I probably don't have to really weld into those type of hubs and things that are that thick. And at any rate, oh, so one of the problems I was having was just when I did want to do an adjustment on here, before it would lock into place, it would be so steep, and there was nothing I could do about it except for drill new holes. But it was going to be nearly impossible to do that without taking all this stuff apart again and take my lock plate off. So what I came up with was just an additional plate that I could slide in there. I could add those holes over there in my drill press because I can take this with me easier than I can take that apart. So I just made a little donut you slide in there and put down, and it locks into this one, and then this one will lock into it in one of those various positions. They give you a little bit more tunability on that. Oh yeah, I was going to show you my spring load. It really does work, so hold on a second. So once you get it down there, you can pull this and see there's no hinges or anything. I designed it to kind of hold itself down. It holds by the springs, but when you pull this, there's nothing there except it just falls into those grooves. So so you hold it down there, and then you pull your little lever. Oh, there you go. You pull your little lever like that, and it locks into place. And you've got that additional tension on the springs. And it is quite a bit. I didn't measure it to weigh it out how much it is, but it's quite a bit. So I made the bar to hold the springs, and that little bracket to hold the bar, and then I made this little key and cut a little groove in the pin so that kind of goes down there and holds the pin in place. I think the spring tension would probably keep it from going anywhere as well, but just a little added security there with that. So yeah. Well, oh yeah, that's what I was going to show you. So along the way of me having this tractor for, like I said, I think it was about 10 years. So these reservoirs, now I did manage to get my my threads cut in my tanks good enough to use the original caps, but I printed replacement caps to go with these as well. But these reservoirs are printed from my 3D printer and then impregnated with the resin that you would use, fiberglass resin. But these are actually plastic from my 3D printer. They're PETG plastic, clear PETG plastic, and I've got them brushed and impregnated with the resin, as I said, from fiberglass, resin and fiberglass resin and body kit. You can buy the resin separate and the hardener. So that one there, I guess. Well, two things. The original one I designed, there was only a single wall and it was too thin. I didn't like it, but it had the right configuration for these. I thought they should be closer together. So without measuring it, I just put them closer together and then realized that they actually needed to be further apart like the original was. The original fit good. But this one fit okay with the hose over here. But that one, there wasn't enough hose to connect to it without me putting the spacers in there for it. So I just cut some pieces of like some PVC pipe and put them in behind that as a spacer. But yeah, those, and if you look real close, it's not going to show up very well, but I branded them Marcus Enterprises on there because I can. And I'll show you, if you will excuse my mess here in Tennessee, I'm going to show you my original right here. This is one of the originals, and Hydro Gear. So I got to looking on eBay for these because I'm a cheapo, I guess, and I figured I'll find two of them for like 20 bucks, bound to. Well, I couldn't. I really couldn't, and I looked everywhere. I found one for 50, and then I finally found some for 30. $30 was absolutely the cheapest I could get on them. And I just wasn't about to pay that. So when I was going to school, in grade school and college, mind you, college I think is probably where I heard it even more. But it was pretty popular, of course, for everybody to talk about the landfills and how they get so full and how plastic takes 1,000,000 years or 10 million or whatever it is to biodegrade in a landfill. And I've never had that experience. I've had actually exactly the opposite. But here's just another example of it. Nothing happened to either one of these, except for that. Yeah, the sun. And so they sat in the sun outside, exposed to the elements, and they just started cracking. And they're so brittle that, like, I can just, with my fingers, I can just squeeze it and it'll start breaking apart and just, yeah, just very brittle, very weak. And that from just sitting outside for less than 10 years. So still have a very hard time understanding where they're coming from with the 1,000,000-year breakdown of plastics. At any rate, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed my little invention, and catch you later.